The man was horrified to discover that the ancient armor he'd stumbled upon had locked onto his body and fitted itself automatically, just like Iron Man's suit. But when he tried to take it off, he found the armor had seemingly fused itself to his flesh. Even more eerie, that very night, wave after wave of demonic spirits began hounding him relentlessly at his door. Aurel is a world-famous French rapper, and his grueling work schedule was on the verge of breaking him mentally. To work through his pent-up negative emotions and prepare for the arrival of their first child, he and his Japanese wife bought a wooden cabin at the foot of Mount Fuji, hoping to give their exhausted minds a much-needed break. The couple were quite pleased with the rundown old property. Even though there was a long dried-up well sitting right in the middle of the main room, they paid it no mind, though. After a few days of work, the house was completely transformed. Aurel turned off airplane mode on his phone to catch up on work, only to be flooded with an endless stream of non-stop notifications. Frustrated, Aurel tied up a rope and climbed down into the dry well. As he looked around, his eyes were drawn to a ghostly mask with a deathly pale, blue-tinged face. That's when Aurel noticed metal fragments of all shapes and sizes scattered all around the well. Driven by curiosity, he brought them all up to the surface and cleaned them thoroughly, only to realize they were pieces of an ancient Japanese samurai armor set. He couldn't resist trying on a pair of the arm guards and leg greaves. But in an instant, the remaining pieces, as if drawn by an invisible call, flew straight to his body and locked themselves into place automatically. It felt like Aurel's mind had exploded. A tidal wave of dark, negative energy crashed over him, as every failure and heartbreak he'd ever endured tore at his mind over and over again. Early the next morning, a dazed Aurel finally climbed out of the well with his wife's help. When she saw the intricate carvings on the armor, she was convinced it was a genuine antique. It seemed they'd hit the jackpot with this house. But Aurel quickly realized he couldn't take the armor off. Every single piece had burrowed into his skin and flesh. The couple struggled for hours, even trying baby oil and vice grips, but nothing worked. With no other choice, Aurel put on an oversized coat to cover the armor, then accompanied his wife to the hospital for her prenatal checkup. Strangely enough, the nurse kept gushing about how perfectly healthy their baby was, but all Aurel could see was something else entirely. He brushed it off as a mental breakdown from his recent tour, and thought nothing more of it. But late that night, a pitch-black hand suddenly reached for his head. Aurel heard a strange noise coming from downstairs, and quickly woke his wife. They were in the middle of nowhere. Could a grizzly bear have broken into the house? They crept downstairs cautiously, the noise growing louder and clearer. His wife summoned up the courage to turn on the light. And what they saw was clearly not a native Japanese creature. Just as they wondered if they were looking at an alien, a monster made entirely of clay suddenly appeared right behind them. In an instant, a yellow figure darted into the middle of the road. His wife swerved hard, sending the car crashing into a rice paddy. When the creature slammed itself onto the windshield, a terrified Aurel bolted from the car and ran for his life. But the clay monster was relentless, tackling him to the ground. Aurel was completely helpless, and the creature quickly locked its grip around his throat. At the last second, his wife appeared and saved him. But weighed down by the armor, Aurel couldn't run fast. He was tackled to the ground once again by another clay monster that appeared out of nowhere. Aurel tried to fight back, but when he kicked the creature with all his might, his foot got stuck fast to its stomach. Early the next morning, his wife thought of a spiritual medium she'd known since childhood. The woman was wise and worldly, and might know what was going on. The pair immediately hopped on a train bound for Osaka. But after leaving the countryside for the big city, Aurel was suddenly overcome with crippling anxiety. When he saw a model posing seductively on a digital billboard, he felt an unfamiliar, overwhelming urge stirring inside him. He forced down the desire and arrived with his wife at the restaurant run by the medium. The woman was blind, but the moment Aurel unzipped his coat, she sensed the evil aura emanating from the armor, and knew exactly where it came from. It turned out every single piece of the armor was carved with legendary powerful yokai, and on either side of the chestplate were etched the names of Japan's creator deities, Izanagi and Izanami. It was clear the armor had an extraordinary, dark history. The story dated back to the Edo period in the 17th century. An ordinary craftsman named Shirogane lost one of his eyes in a meaningless samurai battle. The overwhelming resentment he felt slowly twisted him into a deeply paranoid man. That was when a yokai that feeds on human negative emotions slipped into his mind, amplifying his agony tenfold. Desperate for peace, Shirogane fled deep into the forest, only to come across a grotesque tree strung with human heads. Just then, Izanagi and Izanami appeared before him, and gifted him a sacred set of armor, claiming it would protect him from the yokai's torment. He thought wearing the armor would bring him peace at last, but the armor turned out to have a fatal allure for yokai. Every single night, an endless horde of spirits came for him. Shirogane was a skilled fighter, but even he couldn't endure the endless torment. In the end, after his wife and children left him, he gave up fighting, and was torn to shreds by the countless monsters. After his death, Shirogane's body and the armor were sealed away inside a well. Oral and his wife rushed back home immediately. They knew they would face relentless attacks from the yokai every night, and their only choice was to prepare for the onslaught. Even with her heavily pregnant belly, his wife was no amateur. She'd trained in martial arts since childhood, and was a master judoka. Oral had also trained in martial arts for several years after meeting her. As night fell, the fully prepared pair waited silently for the yokai to appear. It wasn't long before a grotesque, four-armed monster pinned Oral to the couch, leaving him completely defenseless. The monster's body seeped thick, black smoke, plunging the room into total darkness. His wife rushed to open the doors and windows to air out the room, only for the monster to climb back to its feet. Before the pair could even catch their breath, another yokai materialized out of nowhere. This one had no physical form. It was a being of pure energy, made of electricity and laser light. The pair hurled vase after vase from the wall at the creature, and enraged by the hits, it let out a deafening sonic blast, then kicked Oral flying across the room. The ear-splitting noise left Oral writhing in agony on the floor. His wife quickly turned on the bath tap behind her. And in the brief lull, she even ate a cup of instant noodles to recharge her energy. But suddenly, a seductive whisper filled Oral's ears, and he saw a sultry figure appear in the next room. He walked toward it almost against his will, only to find the model he'd seen on the billboard in Osaka that day standing right in front of him. What normal man could resist? Just as Oral was completely spellbound, the creature backed into the corner and took off its coat. In the blink of an eye, its neck stretched longer and longer, as if it was going to wrap itself around Oral and suffocate him.
Peut-être qu'elle est inoffensive et elle veut juste me lécher.
His wife ended up throwing the yokai's head down the dry well. The pair collapsed onto the couch, completely exhausted. Thankfully, no more monsters came for them that night. Early the next morning, his wife drew out every yokai that had appeared over the past 2 days, and made a sharp, startling realization. Every single one of them had a strange, direct connection to Oral. The first clay monster looked almost identical to his father, a man with an obsessive need for control, someone just as inescapable as Clay. If their trip to Japan hadn't been a secret, his father would have followed them there without a doubt. The long-necked female yokai looked exactly like the type of woman Oral was attracted to. The monster with a cigarette for a face and a liquor bottle in its hand? Oral had struggled with addiction to both for a period of his life. And the strange noise-making energy being? It represented the electronic music he created. No matter how many times he killed these monsters, they came back every single night. It left Oral completely drained, mentally and physically. His wife couldn't help but snap. Their baby was due any day, but they'd spent all their time before this wrapped up in his work, and now they were busy fighting off monsters. They hadn't even talked about what to name their child yet. Overwhelmed with anxiety, Oral even picked up the habits he'd quit years ago. But suddenly, a scream came from the bathroom. He rushed over to find his wife had gone into labor, with a pool of clear fluid on the floor. In the blink of an eye, the baby was born. But when Oral got a clear look at the baby in his arms, he was distraught. He stepped outside to get some fresh air, when suddenly a low, deep voice spoke in his ear, asking if he wanted to know how to take off the armor. Oral followed the sound, and before he knew it, he was deep in the forest. There, he found yet another yokai. The creature told him it had never been able to make friends because of its strange appearance, and it wanted Oral to accept it. In exchange, it would tell him the secret to removing the armor. With no other options, Oral chose to trust the creature. And from it, he finally learned why the armor kept attracting yokai. The armor absorbed its host's negative emotions, and used the dark energy to create the monsters themselves. That's why every monster that came at night was linked to him in some way. Soon, the pair reached a tree, and the yokai told Oral that if he made a sincere wish to the tree, the armor would fall off. But perhaps the Japanese gods didn't understand French, because after minutes of praying, nothing happened. Oral sat down by the tree and began ranting, pouring out all his frustration about his grueling work, his wife's perceived lack of understanding, and how all this negativity had been pushing him to the breaking point for so long. Suddenly, the tree's branches came to life, wrapping tightly around Oral. The branches quickly bloomed with flowers, then bore fruit. But in a horrifying twist, every single fruit had a human face, and they kept repeating every bitter word Oral had just spoken. It was clear they'd bloomed and grown by feeding on Oral's negative emotions. A wave of overwhelming weakness washed over Oral, and in his daze, he watched the gaunt black yokai pluck one of the fruits from the tree and eat it whole. When Oral finally woke up from his daze, he found his best friend was there with him. He'd been unconscious for 10 full days. With no other choice, his wife had been forced to reach out to the outside world for help. And strangely enough, ever since he'd fallen into the coma, no more monsters had come at night. But his friend brought him devastating, earth-shattering news. A week earlier, Oral had been spotted completely naked on the streets of Paris, acting aggressively toward passers-by as if he was high on drugs. As a public figure, the internet was quickly flooded with damning videos of Oral. The imposter even hired a team of bodyguards to help him wreak havoc. On live TV, he ranted uncontrollably, and even had his bodyguards beat up the host on air over a minor disagreement. Oral immediately filmed a video to clear his name. By now, he realized he'd been tricked by the yokai. It had lured him to the tree, eaten the fruit grown from his negative emotions, and shapeshifted into his exact form. But the truth was so bizarre, he knew no one would believe it. With his friend's help, Oral left Japan for France first thing the next morning. He was going to take down the imposter himself, and clear his name in front of the whole world. Just then, his friend noticed the imposter was live streaming. Oral watched in horror as he realized the man was in his own home, and had tied up his parents and family members. The imposter was going to execute them live, in front of tens of thousands of viewers. Oral raced to the building as fast as he could, to find the downstairs already swarming with police and protesters. When Oral stepped inside the house, he was suddenly plunged into total darkness. In an instant, every single yokai he'd ever faced materialized around him, trapping him in a circle. The imposter began pouring gasoline everywhere, ready to burn the whole place to the ground. As Oral lay unconscious, his wife crawled to his side and whispered in his ear, their baby was coming, and they had a beautiful life ahead of them. If he kept drowning in his negative emotions, the imposter would only grow stronger. When she saw Oral starting to wake up, the imposter kicked her hard in her pregnant belly. He took off his coat, completely confident in his own strength. Sure enough, Oral only lasted a few hits before he was beaten to the ground. Just as the imposter lit the torch, Oral summoned every last bit of his strength. He remembered a move his wife had taught him, a judo sacrifice throw, a technique that could only be executed with the willingness to risk everything. In that moment, the two of them seemed to cross into another dimension. Two towering figures appeared before them, Izanagi and Izanami, the sibling spouses at the heart of Japanese creation mythology. In the next instant, the armor on Oral's body finally began to fall away, piece by piece. The pair snapped back to the real world. But the imposter got to his feet effortlessly. The sacrifice throw seemed to have done nothing to him. By now, Oral had no fight left in him at all. The imposter beat him until his face was covered in blood, and sneered that he would never live to see his baby be born. But as the final piece of the armor fell from Oral's body, the imposter could no longer siphon negative energy from him. The yokai finally reverted to its true, hideous form. In the blink of an eye, the armor soared into the air and struck down the monster, ending its life once and for all. And with that, the movie came to an end.